Welcome to Constructive, a podcast about construction, technology, and whatever else comes up. Hope you enjoy.
But Ryan, with us from Current Sets, start with kind of where you started your career. How were you introduced to
I've always been around construction people. So my granddad was a civil engineer at Disney, and I visited him a decade ago, and he took me on a behind-the-scenes tour of Disney infrastructure. So
Nice.
that's kind of been in our blood. My uncle's a contractor, builds commercial warehouses. I grew up tinkering with RC planes, fixing things around the house, and then gravitated toward mechatronics, mechanical engineering in college, where we worked on mechatronics has kind of three pillars: electrical, computer science, and mechanical. So we had 3D printers, we were programming, kind of like Arduino, and then building the electrical circuits for it. So that was a really good kind of mechanical but computer science start for me. And then when I started my career, I started at a nuclear site, working on site as a design engineer. So that was like an adult playground to me.
Let's pause there because I'm interested in nuclear. Maybe we can talk about the state of nuclear too, if you have opinions. But I just think it's a great source of energy. I know we need to work on safety, but what was your experience too? Because I know those projects are complicated from an engineering standpoint. How did you like being in that sector of the industry?
I think for me, I think it was the biggest project in the country at the time, $16 billion estimated project. It finished over budget, but it was amazing. I mean, we had a 30-year gap between the old nuclear plants that had been built and then these Vogtle 3 and 4. So there's this natural age gap between the people that have done it and then this new group that was coming along. And they would hire a lot of these Westinghouse, Navy nuke engineers to sit with us, the next generation, and we would designing and writing, we call them ENDCRs, they're kind of like RFIs, but engineering, design and change for the West. So
is there a lot, like I'm sure you got to see, we've advanced a lot in that technology. Is it like really hard to build a nuclear power plant now?
They finished the projects I was on. So I left because it was the end was not clear. And I kind of figured out I wanted to start a construction technology company. And if I saw that through, I would have left the project like 2 years ago.
Sure.
So that was kind of a long place to stay. But the Fukushima accident, when the water came up from the tsunami, pulled out the diesel backup generators, which are pumping water in to cool. So this was kind of the major design change they made. When they lost the diesel backups, they couldn't pump water in to cool the reactor, so it got hotter and hotter, and then it bust. So the new design put a water tank on the top, and when an event happens, hopefully not, it just naturally gravitates, and you have 72 hours to refill the tank. So that was kind of the major design change. There's a few different types of reactors. It's designs. Some have a loop from the reactor building to the turbine building directly. Some have another loop. So the one we had 3 loops, and that kind of it changes where the radiation goes. So
is it for redundancy?
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
And I was not working on those systems. That was the Westinghouse group. But I was working on basically we had like hundreds of these 3-letter acronym systems. So I had PWS, SDS, CWS at one point. So like PWS is potable water, which is your drinking water. FPS is your fire protection system. SDS is your sanitary drainage system. And there's like hundreds of them. Engineers were managing each one.
Don't you think that's one of the things, probably about every job, but is learning acronyms? It's an annoying part of jobs. I wish there weren't acronyms, but
I was in that camp of it creates an unnecessary advantage for people that have been there.
It feels like it. But sometimes it's for ease of conversation, and you're just like, when both of you know what they are, it does facilitate a more efficient conversation. So I don't want to be so negative.
And
Let's
you could look at a drawing and you could see SV3. So that was the third unit in Vogel, SDS, and then you could figure out the system where it was, um, from the nomenclature that created. So, and we had a booklet that helped you figure it out. So
is that like I wonder if I already feel like we're getting into like maybe some of the motivation why you care about 2D drawings and drawing sets in general and the quality of drawings.
I think it
Start there.
Yeah, definitely. I saw a place where they were doing 3D modeling on site. So we had staff that was doing BIM coordination. I was working in 2D and 3D, and a lot of times the field requests were coming in so fast that I was changing the 2D design to keep them moving.
Sure.
And then we would use the 2D or as built, measurements to update the model to where it actually was. So I saw this intersection of 3D, 2D, the speed of 2D, the lag of 3D. Most people aren't maintaining it through construction like we were. And then I got to work on the software that we were using to take specific problems in the site and then update our designs. That was kind of where I caught the bug. It was somewhere in the combination of looking in 3D and 2D, and then the ability to change a workflow and then see the impact. So if you make a software change that saves time, it multiplies, and that was really cool to me.
Yeah. Let's keep moving through your history. What after the nuclear?
I think when I was doing the software piece, I learned that the field of product management was what would take me to potentially starting a construction technology company. So that I got lucky to stumble into that career path. I don't really remember how I found it, but I went to business school at Chapel Hill, and I studied entrepreneurship, corporate finance, took a lot of real estate classes, and that was a really good combination to give me confidence to get into product management and also not be too scared to jump into starting a company. I think you need to be pretty naive. That business school was a good transition, and then I moved out to San Francisco. I was telling you I worked for a reality capture company. We were doing DR for NFL quarterbacks. So capture
was fun.
It was awesome. The idea is if you can only practice so many times. So if you can capture something that's realistic as a quarterback, you can go watch a bunch of reps and then look at the formations that were happening.
And you don't have to get tackled.
Exactly. Or do anything physical. So a lot of them would have the VR headset and they would do the snap and then look through the field and go through the progressions.
Sounds valuable.
Yeah. It was a great experience for me. I worked for a guy that forced me to code to be a product manager, which
what were you coding in?
Python.
Okay.
So it was all taking we collected 10 hertz, so 10 times a second we would take yaw, pitch, roll like an airplane, right? And then XYZ. So you get the location and then the direction that your headset was pointing in. And we were taking that from computers, loading it up into the cloud, and then building analytics on top of that. So one of the pushbacks that people have on product managers that haven't been technical is their inability to influence software engineers. So that's kind of what he was challenging me on, is write some code, be able to earn the respect of the software engineers. And then the basic premise of product management is taking a business problem and then translating it into building something. So that was a great experience for me.
And that served you lately, or do you feel like
the coding piece?
Yeah.
And then the coding with AI is even more powerful for a product manager like me.
For sure.
So I've worked with development teams where they're working at night in India and I'm writing requirements. And now there's some projects that I can do by myself that I can kind of prompt what I'm looking for and then get immediate feedback and kind of keep pushing through that. So
do you have feelings? Sorry to sidetrack, but
I know it's
on vibe coding, like, do you think it will change a dynamic? Because I'm already like, when I think about automating my tasks, the first thing I do is go try to vibe code a web app for whatever the thing is I'm doing. I don't think everybody's doing that yet, but seems like it it could be part of the future? And does that mean there will be less tech companies?
I think it definitely changes the way you do prototyping.
Mm.
Have you built something, used it, and then tried to maintain it?
And failed in the process every time, mostly. But yeah, I've just been doing it creatively, seeing what happens, and usually I don't spend the time to get it to 100%.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we were talking earlier about needing to know, like the line,
Yeah.
a fool with a tool is still a fool. I don't know if that plays exactly, but the maintenance part is definitely something you need to get right. That vibe coding doesn't necessarily set you up for, but everything's moving really fast. So
yeah, and the worry I have too is people are now going to think building software is so easy,
right,
and they're not going to want to trust people to do the hard work of like troubleshooting and fixing issues. And that's the stuff that I've noticed can't really be done. All right, let's keep moving through your career.
My goal moving out to San Francisco was to get into construction technology. So the 3D reality capture, VR was very close to what I was doing, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. So I came across Katera, and we were building a combination of drawings, schedule, cost, materials, um, tracking in a end-to-end platform. And Katera, most of the people listening probably know the outcome. We were doing definitely too much. So an example is that software platform we were building was across a lot of different things that are pretty hard to build at once. And we made it pretty far. We were doing a lot of different prototypes on the different types of designs we were trying to build modularly. And I think in some ways we probably skipped nailing one prototype or nailing one piece of a software solution. So on the other hand, it was a lot of smart people that got together. I learned a ton about the other side of construction outside of nuclear. And it was another good experience for me remotely building. I was working on drawings and analytics again. So
seems like a great opportunity. I think if I had known about Katera, I would have been applying. I didn't at the time, but just because they were trying to solve a really big problem and kind of all inclusive. They were trying to solve all facets of the problem too. But yeah, like tell me a little bit about your experience. I know, I'm sure you learned a lot, but also maybe if you saw things that you're like, I think we could still do some of those ideas, but tweak them in this way and it will work for someone else. Or do you think like there's another Katera that can do it right someday is my question.
Yeah. I mean, they were trying to be a material supplier, builder, vertically integrated builder, self-perform, and then build a software solution. So I was obsessed with joining it. It was a pretty high goal company, and I've talked to a lot of people on the outside that said, I knew that would fail. I don't know. The modular piece.
I guess they're only saying that because they have
hindsight's 2020. Yeah, 100%. Right. I don't know, but I think getting one prototype right, figuring out figuring out your demand consistently. So if you're trying to, these are big lumpy sales, right? You're building a lot of modules for an apartment building. How do you create a consistent demand for keeping your factory busy?
Oh, I agree. It's really hard. I'm not surprised they failed given the size of the problem they tried to solve, but I still think I'm just an optimistic person. Maybe you are too, but it's like somebody should be able to do this.
Right.
And whoever does, it would be a great opportunity. So I would jump on it, of course.
Yeah. It reminded me back when I was doing the design engineering. I mean, generative design it's not a new idea.
Sure.
The idea that you can conceptualize things and the design can be created, whatever the means is, AI or algorithmic design. As a design engineer, I wanted to specify the way that the limits of my systems and then see options and be able to choose them. And that would have been an amazing thing when I was doing pipe routing with no aesthetic component. It's purely functional in a nuclear plant, right? So That's an even more just technical challenge. How do you minimize bends? How do you make sure the flow is okay? Minimize conflicts. So like that generative design is very interesting. And the other idea I had back then is if you figure out how to build things with, this is more futuristic, but with robots,
Yeah.
maybe your design isn't even what we can imagine.
Hmm.
So if you combine this, robotic completion plus the generative piece, I think in the probably a little further out, we'll see some concepts of ways that buildings are built that aren't even stuff that will.
I feel like it lines up, but like they're saying AI is pretty good at investing strategies that don't make any sense to humans. Like the ones that make sense to humans, everybody's kind of already doing it. But sometimes I've just heard through the grapevine that AI will come up with an investing strategy that's something like buy a stock on a full moon and then sell it on the next full moon. And for some reason it works. And somehow those strategies seem to work way better than any strategy that makes logical sense. And we don't really know why. I wonder, are you getting at that kind of concept?
Yeah. And I mean, there's also if you take enough data and correlate it, you'll find random correlations, right? And maybe that's not, maybe that is, maybe there's some human behavior between full moons that we're not aware of.
Good point. I think I just made that part up, but it seems random, right? Yeah.
Right.
I don't know. Okay, so Katera, what after, or if you want to get into anything else, but how did you go until the end, and was it like?
We were talking about this earlier, so a lot of the drawing tools are built for construction management, source of truth. Mm-hmm. So we were building a version of that. Mm. How do you load a set in? What's the most recent set? How do you view it on an iPad? How do you view it on computer? Write RFIs, do all the workflows through the drawings. It's an interesting problem. It's definitely a solved problem. If you look at the collection of companies between Procore, Autodesk, CMIC, FieldWire, there's more that are coming out now that are similar versions. I think they're saying they're going to be cheaper and connect it all together and maybe add AI. So I don't know. That problem's interesting for sure. I felt like there was not a drawing tool that was letting you investigate the drawings. So instead of being just a source of truth, how do you pull the thread on constructability or coordination?
Sure.
And a lot of people are doing that in Bluebeam. So that was kind of an idea that was a part of it. And then another was back in, I think when I was in business school, I saw the model of people doing tech-enabled services. So you sell a service, you build the software as you're doing the service, and you kind of prove that there's a problem. You prove that you can get paid from day zero. So from the first month that we started all the way through today, for the last 4.5 years, we've made money, not profit, but we've had revenue.
Sure.
So that kind of changed our ability to do those reviews and then have that view on that drawing discovery piece. And then one other thing I learned at Katera and at the VR company was, and this is what I was getting at with your vibe coding comment, the maintainability. So as soon as you launch a software product and you have users, you're supporting them, right? Mm-hmm. So at Katera, we had users and they had these 18-month projects that we needed to support. And we were trying to redo some of the modules. And do you migrate them or do you just let them go? Usually you split development teams. So one will manage that and then one will manage the new. So, and then at the VR company, the same thing. We had an app that was built to manage the NFL teams. And then we had another app that was for Walmart and our enterprise customers. So the idea with us, by doing these reviews, our cycle time was 3 weeks for the last 4.5 years. So we had V1. We didn't do any reviews in V1. V2 we ran for a year, and we're on V6, and we've depreciated V1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we don't have to maintain them. We
never do a lot of point somethings, or is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or is it 1.2?
We do that now, and we did that on those versions.
I'm just curious how those things end up like
Yeah, I think they're kind of made up, but you have to come up with a system. So it's some sort of major, minor, so.
Let's go back a little bit to starting current sets, because I heard you getting into it, but it sounds like just from your intro to it, like it was kind of, you had clients built in from the very beginning, basically. And it sounds like because there was a problem that they needed solved, and maybe they were using Bluebeam, but your solution was more elegant. Explain that, get deeper into that.
Yeah, so we did take some early investment, and from a developer. He was very informative in the beginning. He said, "I hate surprises. Like I've paid an architecture team to do this coordination. I've hired a contractor to build it, and now there's these surprises. There's these delays. There's these coordination busts." And I've seen that in the nuclear piece. But I think pretty early on we figured we could get owner buy-in and contractor buy-in, and we networked. So the early sales were all through like second degree connections. So it was hustling, picking up the phone, getting on video calls. We did it all in Bluebeam for the first 4 months. And then we were able to get a product working by, I think, December that we were using instead of Bluebeam. And that's kind of been the start of that piece. But
what was the initial feedback?
From the reviewer? Yeah. So, we have some customers from February of 2021 that have sent us 120 reviews. So I would say that speaks for itself. A lot of them have said, this is something you've learned along the way. If you're selling the service, you're like, okay, they're going to send me the plans, we'll do the review, and then we'll send it back to them. And there's a lot more feedback baked into it that we've learned to add to our process to set expectations, but also understand parts of it.
Maybe so everybody can. Do you want to give the elevator pitch of what current sets is, just to set that on the record?
Yeah, I think we probably skipped that a little bit.
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine. So we take people's 2D plans, built in Revit, Autodesk, whatever the authoring tool is, and we built a way to take all of those plans and then overlay them in ways that we can pull experts in and find conflicts early in the pre-construction process. I guess late in the pre-construction process before construction starts. And we've cut down the time from 2D plans to getting into this overlaid view down pretty substantially from other methods that let us pretty competitively price our services. So we're doing 2 to 3 week turnaround. We've been a very small team, and we've delivered 450 plus reviews in 4.5 years that I don't think would be possible without some speeding up of that process.
And I know you're getting like some feedback from clients that kind of helps you track like how much time or effort or money you're saving these clients. Do you want to share examples?
There's a study that an RFI takes $1,080 to, this is an older study, but just in administrative time. So if you look at how long it takes to write an RFI for the architect to respond, for the owner to see it in the OAC meeting. So like I think about the time savings alone from reducing 50 RFIs from a project. I don't think the goal is 0.
Yeah.
But if you can take down from 300 to 200, or there's definitely
and just the headache of when drawings aren't super clear. It's something I deal with as a PM every single day, is contractors feeling, and sometimes they just need to ask the question and the architect will answer it, but a lot of times it's the drawings aren't clear.
Right.
And I'm just as frustrated by the design as the contractor. So
I think, I'm curious what you think about this too, but I think that a lot of times the goal is permit. So it's, can we get these plans permitted? And then can we build it? And I think there's a gap between constructible and permittable.
Sure.
So that's kind of what
yeah, in my little sector, it's DSA is the big body that's reviewing. And so it's like we design to DSA. And then, like you're saying, we realize after DSA approval, there's all this constructability stuff that we actually run into when we try to build it. And some of it is, how is like that person going to feel in the dark over there? There's no light or whatever. It's human stuff more so. Do you feel like you can tackle that side of it too?
That's what we're pushing for. And we've been, I think, a pretty attractive cost point where people can pull that lever. I was talking to a large contractor earlier this week that was saying a lot of the owners they're working with are trying to pull a value engineering lever with increased material prices. So how can we make this more affordable, right? The first conversation is VE. And they were saying that the constructability side has kind of gone away from their request. It's more about trying to get the agreed upon price down through value engineering. But this constructability has a way of escalating the prices through slowdowns in the field.
It's things that are hard to quantify too, because like you said, I've been on a lot of construction projects and just unclear drawings. It might not mean, well, you might not be able to tie it to that, but I just know from like the field test that that's why this project is 30% more expensive than it was estimated. It's because there's just like a difference. I feel like maybe I was talking to someone else today, but like people in the field, some of them are really smart, but they don't necessarily read sophisticated drawings. And so you got a foreman or a superintendent that knows the drawings and they're trying to communicate those. It's a game of telephone, and you have the architect design something. And so I just love that there's a company out there that's not just trying to say, oh, we have to change everything into 3D modeling and a whole new digital process, but
my site systems that I was building were pumping water to all these commercial buildings, and we were 3D modeling it. Yet there was elevation, size, location bus into each of the buildings, and like that's something that we figured out how to overlay. And 90% of the projects we look at, we're finding bus there for ground up development. But that's something that, it's great to 3D model it. I'm not anti-BIM in any way, but if you can find it in a practical way, it's an easy way to save that money. Also, we see a lot of design teams that have been working on a project for a long period of time.
Yeah.
And whose responsibility is it to look at the systems holistically across all different disciplines?
Yeah.
So
we kind of have the same problem the medical world does with like specialized doctors. Like I keep hearing we need doctors who have a holistic approach. We kind of need a party or people to have a more holistic approach to building too, do you think?
I don't know the answer for the medical space. But I definitely agree.
Yeah.
Hey, my ears are flaking.
Yeah.
And you go and they're like, it's not me. You're like, well, who is it?
You're the ear doctor, right? Well, it might be a skin thing. Go to the dermatologist.
Go to the dermatologist. You're like, okay. Then you call the telehealth person and they'll just send you steroid drops and then you still have it. I might or might not have flaky ears. And I might or might not have it solved.
Yeah.
But I think that focus on a very specific task as a civil engineer, mechanical engineer, the architect is the coordinator, but I think they're in an unfair position where their fees have been squeezed potentially. They're on tight deadlines. They're moving project to project. There's a lot of attrition. People are moving on to other roles, or the good people are getting promoted. Or so a lot of general contractors I talk to say they're educating new architects, regularly. So along with the education internally. But I was that. I was the design engineer on site that my mechanical engineering degree didn't teach me how to design and build pump systems, but my engineer peers and then my superintendents did. So it's kind of what it takes. But if you need people to stay, right? It's a problem with any company. If people are coming for 2 years and leaving, it's not a sustainable model.
It's a good segue. I'd love to talk about your people philosophy. Are you a pretty small team still?
Yeah, 7.
As you grow, what kind of people do you want?
So there's a company philosophy, startup philosophy that I don't know what the most common recommendation is, that everybody should be a generalist, and I pretty strongly disagreed with that. So I've tried to find people that are very good at their role. So software group, service group, sales group, and the roles are focused. So I think that's been a really good thing that we've done. So there's not a lot of overlap, and there's not a lot of like, whose responsibility is this, and balls being dropped.
Sure. Do you care about like people having experience in the construction industry and technology, and how do you balance those? Like, if you're hiring a programmer, do you hope that they at least care what construction is?
I mean, everybody touches the built world, right? So I think most people care about the space they live in. I know that doesn't mean you have direct construction experience, but like when we were in the VR world, and then here, a lot of people that are into graphics don't go into construction. They go into animation or different things that don't have an impact on the built world. So I think there's a story that people can tell there to recruit better. For most of the functions, we do hire people that have some background, but it's not a prerequisite.
Sure.
And Katera was kind of some of the. It's a bigger general question. Does a disruptor of the construction space need to have a construction background, or do they need to have a new view into it?
Yeah.
I think it's a mix. The construction industry is very complicated.
Yeah.
So,
I know we were debating before this, but want to bring it up a little bit in the episode too. But I kind of came into this thinking Current Sets is not really trying to disrupt the industry, and you helped me kind of reframe that. But my thought was, you're working on 2D when the disruption to me was 3D, but you helped me kind of see it differently. Explain.
Yeah, I think if you force yourself to get better over and over. I mean, going back to 2D first. So the reality is we work in 2D today, and maybe there's a future where we're building out of the model. A lot of the bigger, I toured some almost multi-billion-dollar projects last week, and they're 3D modeling everything, as they should be. There's a lot of the long tail of the construction industry that's not doing that. So, how long is it going to take?
Sorry to interrupt you too, but I think about this a lot. If you gather up all the construction projects, even if we just think about US, and you look at them in terms of dollar value, I think the median cost of a construction project is way lower than you imagine. But the ones that are $50 billion projects, they're so big that like the actual average, like not median, but average, is a lot higher. So you think about construction projects as like, $10 million. That might be a normal amount. But there's a lot of
$10 million is a big project.
There's tons of little, just fix that fence construction project. And are we just going to ignore that architects still have to draw something when you're doing a big fencing project, but it's only going to cost $20,000 in construction?
Right. Yeah, that's not the market we serve today, but there's a tail of the market that we're serving that I think a lot of the 3D model is serving the most sophisticated. And I think there's just a part of the construction spectrum where they're not. I mean, we're looking at a good mix of projects that are doing 3D modeling and that aren't. So it's a different type of, it's the same service, but it's cleaning up your coordination before you model so that you can get higher value out of that, or being an alternative to nothing.
Well, you think of like clash detection and conflict detection too as something uniquely need to do in 3D.
Well, what if you're not doing it at all?
Okay.
So you're like, okay, we're going to just figure this out. And then for a lot of apartment buildings, it results in these like drop ceilings. You lose your amenity space ceiling height.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily modeling. And we can get someone that's trained, like you talk to a superintendent and you say, what do you see when you look at 3D drawings? I see it in my head. So I don't know. It's a version of it. It's different.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a better version than just saying, hey, PE, do a constructability review. This is how you need to earn your chops.
Right.
Because it's good. That's how you learn. That's how my co-founder learned.
Yeah.
He was a PE, APM, TM coming up to the field, worked for a superintendent that was very tech savvy, spent 10,000 hours in Bluebeam doing that.
Yeah.
He knows it. But a lot of these projects, you're just kind of waiting and playing a reactive game. So that's kind of the goal is for most of the CD sets that we're looking at, the end of construction design documents, we're charging $6,000 to $15,000, 15 for like a pretty large project.
Yeah.
And that's not a very big line item for a lot of these projects.
100%.
And then you're looking at the RFIs saved. So like a few site to building busts, a few column misalignments.
Yeah.
And pretty quickly pays for itself.
Yeah. I also, as an owner's rep, I get to help owners figure out how much we're paying architects for things like CA and just reviewing RFIs. And I hear owners complaining all the time about, man, it's just so expensive to keep these architects on board. And not to say I want their involvement, but if we could minimize it a little, I think every owner would just be praising you.
Yeah. How we've tried to fit in, and again, I'm saying the architect's in a tough spot. When they go to permit, they're getting comments back from the city.
Yeah.
And then they're moving into CA and they're moving on to other projects, as I understand it.
Yeah.
And they're kind of, we call it like pencils up, pencils down.
Right.
So once the project moves into CA, there's a little bit of a different philosophy. So we've tried to figure out how to time our reviews so that we're fitting into that time when they're still expecting comments back. Yeah. And that influences positive change. We have architects on staff. We think a lot about the language we use in our comments. This is a challenge with RFIs. If they're not written well, they're probably not getting responded to.
Right.
So how do we write comments so they're clear? How do we write them so they're not offensive?
Yeah.
How do we get our export format so that it's easy to work with? And I think all of that does play into it quite a bit.
Yeah, I think so too.
Versus, just a mess of and I see this from a lot of the coordination reviews we look at, or other ways that people are doing reviews. Like a lot of owners are paying for an ADA review. They're paying for a weatherproofing review. And when you look at them, they're multi-page written documents, and what do I need to change, right?
Exactly.
And it's like you need to read this and you need to
give me the action item.
Yeah, exactly. So we've tried to focus our review on getting to that place. So how do you get the review so that it's actionable? And I think over time, we're hoping that our platform is a good way to pull in all of those disparate types of reviews and all those disparate formats so that it streamlines it even more.
Yeah.
So that you can easily make the changes, get the input that you need, and then less problems.
Yeah.
The other thing is we see a lot of times people will make a comment, whether it's in those external reviews or internal reviews, the drawings don't get updated, and then they see it in construction. And that's kind of the worst thing.
Yeah.
Right? You found it, but you still experience the
Exactly.
pain. Yeah.
I love this though, and you're doing a great job of it. I want to make sure I'm clear. I love architects. I think that what they do is a hugely valuable service, and I don't disparage them for the stereotypes I'm talking about, and it's not even really their fault. So I don't want to feel like that, but I just this is what I think tech should do, is facilitate human communication. That's kind of what it feels like at a high level current sets is doing, making communication amongst parties of humans easier. And the tech is that's what I want. I want architects' jobs to be easier. I don't want them to hate responding to RFIs. I know they don't like it either. And
yeah, so how do you think from their perspective and try and create a collaborative? It's cultural, it's the software tools, it's the process, it's all of it. And, and you can't act like it's just one. It's not just the tech. It's not just it's the way you write your sentence. It's the way so.
Cool. I think everybody check out Current Sets. It sounds like an awesome product to me. I'm going to be looking more into it, but maybe we can get into just tech in general in this final part. What do you think about the future? What's your take on the future of construction? I'll keep it vague at first.
Yeah.
Is that too vague?
No, it's fine. I feel like I've had these dreams for the way that there's so many different parts of it. There's the way you design, the way that you budget, the way that you schedule. And each has its own cluster of companies now, which is so cool. I feel like, I don't know if Katera was the spark on that, venture funding into it, but there's definitely a focus on taking the administrative burden out of these different parts and trying to surface them up.
So what do you think that's going to look like to take that to the end?
On what time frame?
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely been interested in the contractual side. I've not been exposed to it quite as much, but I think that has the opportunity to change people's relationship and willingness to collaborate. So some of these IPD projects with the lean construction we've been visiting, I'm by no means an expert on this, but the idea is that the project doing well has shared profit.
Exactly.
So it just kind of like, they talk about like, we're not a company, we're this project. So you don't talk about what company you represent, you talk about the project that you're working on. And the project I worked on we didn't talk about lean construction when I was there, but we had a version of this big room that they talk about. We were all sitting together, we were all on site together, and we had kind of a shared mission on nuclear, clean energy, trying to make this thing happen that hadn't been done in a long time. So that had modular, I think that's a piece of it.
Yeah.
How do you componentize, standardize pieces of a construction project? I think one of the arguments for modular is you can control a factory environment way better than you can control
a job site.
Hiring people in one location, and then the burden of the shipping. Yeah. And then the other intangible is the local municipalities getting on board with it.
Yeah, the interesting thing about that to me right now is you're kind of bound to the size of things you can ship. So a shipping container or a truck. And then you also probably really don't want to ship a bunch of air. So you were going to have some assembly on site no matter what, right?
Right.
And I just think that's an interesting problem. And I think IKEA is a good example here. Like it's not like they're selling finished furniture. You're building it on site, but they're shipping it on pallets to the store, and then you're taking it home in a box. There's no air in the box, So how much can be assembled on site, and does that really limit or help us that much? I'm not sure. I think prefab and modular is interesting, but I think people have too vague of a concept of it. I think we need to get practical and see how that actually makes everything better, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. I mean, some of our customers are successfully building modular in the Bay Area, where they're standardizing the layouts of the modules, and they're getting local municipality buy-in. They view in high urban dense areas it's a viable option, and then in the more remote places that they're building, they're doing stick build. And that's kind of the threshold for what they're saying is a go no go on whether to do modular or not. Again, as I understand it, I'm not an expert on the economic side of it, but did your phone die?
Yeah. Well, it's good timing. I really appreciate letting you or giving me permission to come hang out with you, and I think we should do this again. I'll check in with you in a few months and see how things are going.
We're doing a major update to our software over the next 3 weeks that kind of lets us start letting. So you need like 1 or 2 people to manage the process that we manage in our software. So this is uploading plans, setting up the overlays, and then distributing the reviews out to the different experts that have, their specific areas of expertise. And this next month of work kind of unlocks our tool to let other people do this on their own. So to me, that has multiplying levels of impact in what we can do as a small team. But by doing these reviews and changing the software and changing the way we do the reviews, like it's pushed us really hard and really far to mold this platform that I'm really excited to see the adoption of people independent of us start using it more. So we've been doing reviews in parallel with a lot of our customers over the last few years, where we're doing the setup, they're coming in, they're doing reviews with us.
Cool.
But I think there's another extension of it where people are doing it independent of us too. So
Do you want to tell people how to start, or should they go to?
yeah, right. We don't have like a self-service
Okay.
piece of it built out yet. So the best way would be to reach out, bo@currentsets.com,
Sure.
and I can get you started. So
And we'll put some links in the episode description. You can let me know, but I'll put your email in there if that's what you want.
that sounds great.
Thanks again.
I really enjoyed this. Yeah.
We'll do it again.
Thank you.
Perfect. I think that's going to